I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, June 15th, 2021 Village of Ashwaubenon Park and Rec Board meeting. Roll call, please.
Mark Castonia.
Here.
Tracy Flukie. Here. Deborah Lundberg. Here. Aideen Hess.
Here.
Heidi Murphy. Here. Chris Zerbel.
Here.
And Donovan Miller is excused.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, action on the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion approved. Comments from the public. Must be limited to items not on the agenda. Must state name and address. Limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personal issues cannot be discussed nor individual named. Board is not able to take action at this meeting. Do we have any comments from the public in person or via Zoom or internet? Nobody here. Comments from the public? Nothing. Okay. Written communications. We do have something addressed to Rex on behalf of the Ashwaubenon Department of Public Safety. Thank you for your donation of Ashwaubenon Park Passes for the DARE essay winners. Students were recognized for completing the DARE program, Keeping It Real curriculum. We truly appreciate your support and generosity. Sincerely, Jackie Dunlap, Public Safety Officer, DARE Liaison Officer. Thank you, Rex. All right, action. Oh, there we go. There we go. Action on the consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Action items. A, review written communications. Oh, no, wrong one. Where am I? Sorry, folks, still getting used to this. Where I am. All right. I'll get there eventually. Discussion of possible action on village growth in southwest quadrant. Rex.
This discussion point was brought forward at the last meeting. We were looking at discussion topics and projects that we may wish to consider for consideration for the 2022 budget. During those discussion talks, we talked a little bit about the growth in the southwest quadrant of the village. That's around Sand Acres Park, the Highland Ridge Golf Course area, with at least part of that at this point, looking, at a new housing development, and then potentially future housing developments to the west, southwest. With that discussion of the growth out there, it was discussed that, what do we want to do at Sand Acres Park? Can Sand Acres Park hold the number of people that are potentially going to be using it in the future, or that it will be serving? And would it be wouldn't it be prudent to take a look at another parkland site out in that area? So what we wanted to do was just show you, or what's attached in your packet is a copy of the new development that's going to be happening. That's Highland Ridge Estates. If you take a look, that's on page 8AA, the black and white diagram. On the top of the page, going left to right, is Sand Acres Drive. So you can see the amount of homes. What are we, Tracy, about 120, 124?
32 or something like that.
Yeah, regardless, it's a fairly large number. If you take a look at the bottom of the page, and you can see the roadway, which is hatched lines, kind of by the seal on the bottom there. That roadway will eventually go to future potential development. It's a future potential roadway leading to potential future subdivisions as well. So again, there's a good chance there's going to be, all depends on the developer and what they're willing to try out, but probably some more houses going in there as well, homes in some form or fashion. So then we're like, okay, well, what do we want to do to alleviate the crowding at Sand Acres, if anything, or is Sand Acres good enough? So what you have on the next page, the mapping, is a kind of an aerial shot of that whole area. You can see to the right, kind of in the middle of the page, you'll see almost like a circle with all kinds of white dots that are homes. Immediately to the northwest of that little open green area is Sand Acres Park. The line going up the middle of the page, or just to the right of center, that is Sand Acres Drive. And that green area in the middle of the page, immediately left of Sand Acres Drive, is the golf course. So the housing development that you see, the black and white development, is going to be on the north half of that large green area in the middle of the page. As you can see on that, there's still a fair amount of land available for development. It could be commercial, it could be residential, or it could be a combination of both. My guess is maybe a combination of both, with Packland Drive being there. That may be kind of more leaning towards commercial, but you never know. Regardless, there's still going to be quite a few homes going in that area as we move forward. So the discussion point is, I don't want to say, should we do a park? I mean, a park, whether it be a pocket park, some type of facility may certainly be prudent to take some pressure off of Sand Acres Park. But just kind of let you know where we're at, kind of give you a thinking point moving forward, whether it be for this budget season or whether it be as more development starts to occur, of what direction we might want to go in. With that, I guess I will ask if anyone has any questions, thoughts on anything that I've talked about so far.
Rex, could you point out on the aerial view the subdivision plat?
Sure. This area right here is where the subdivision is going to be.
Okay.
This area is, at this point, remaining a 9-hole executive course.
Right.
But with this subdivision plat, potentially, there could be a roadway going through here and opening up more of this area for residential development. But at the very least, right now, this area right on top here, underneath my hand, that's what's planned for redevelopment. It's on the docket.
So that secondary area of development would be outside of the golf course?
Correct.
Okay.
It's basically open field right now. It includes a fair amount of wetland, so it would be challenging for a developer to go in there. But quite honestly, there's always developers that like a good challenge, if they can see a way to make some money. You know what I mean? And create a new development for a community. So, and quite honestly, you look at, a developer may look at that as a challenge. We may also look at that as an opportunity, because when there's wetlands, typically wetlands are, you may not be able to build a home on wetland or put in a business or something, but the wetlands are also real good depending on what kind of wetlands they are. You can really put some nice trails and walkways through there. So the thought is, we'll see what develops, moving forward. But, something to also keep in mind is there any opportunities to link some of these developments through the wetland areas where they might not be able to build homes? That might be a nice opportunity for us as well.
That tan part that you mentioned could possibly be developed later. Is that part of Ashwaubenon, or is that in Tom of Lawrence?
Everything in that big, okay, so let me back up here, Mark.
Okay,
Sand Acres Drive,
yeah,
Grant Street, Ackerland. Everything in here is Ashwaubenon, except these two squares, which are the town homes. But everything in here is Ashwaubenon, except here. There's also a little bit of wards in here, very little, but that's already developed.
Rex, while you're up there, can you point out Sand Acres again?
Sand Acres Park
Yep.
is right here.
Okay, that's where
This
it
is
was.
a sledding hill.
Yep.
This big green area is a sledding hill. And you can kind of see this, it looks great, but that's actually one of the playgrounds.
Yep, okay.
So this might be a rookie question, but how do we like dib the land for a park? Like, do you just ask the developer to include that in their plans, or like,
There's
be like, go hug it and be like, this
Sure.
is mine?
No, there's a couple ways to do it. We've got some different things on the books where new development would include park development fees. So every parcel would need to pay a park development fee when it's developed. There's also, parkland fees where we could ask the developer to donate some land, which they may be happy to do in lieu of some fees, especially if it's wetland, because if you can't build on it, what good is it to them? So, they may be willing to enter discussions of giving certain pieces of land that we could use, for trails or parkland. Couple different ways to do it, but really it depends on once the developer comes in with a proposal, sits down with our administrative staff. That's kind of when the discussions begin of, as long as they're aware of what the park board's wishes are moving forward, that's when they would enter into some initial discussions with that developer of potentially doing something like that in there.
is there any information that indicates a ratio between population and number of parks?
There are NRPA standards, National Recreation Park Association standards, for a community's size and the number of parks that would be good for a particular community size. And there's different kind of parks. There's pocket parks, there's neighborhood parks, there's medium-sized parks. There's different names for all the different sizes type of a thing. We kind of got to wait and see what the development is in there before we decide, like, if we even want to put a park in, what size park might be appropriate for that. Certainly Sand Acres can hold a lot of people, and we're already looking at putting in a permanent restroom there, which would obviously make it more, friendly in terms of usage for families with younger kids. If that whole thing, though, goes in the direction of housing, that's a lot of extra people, and so then you might be taking a look at a smaller pocket park or neighborhood park where it's just, just to try and relieve some of the playground usage or something like that. I'm not talking soccer fields or anything. You've got the sports complex fairly close to that and other things going on, but there could be an opportunity to put something else in there, or the need.
Is there any speculation on how quickly this development is expected to like take off, or how quickly people are going to be building or moving, or?
The development that you have in your packet will be done in a couple of different phases.
Right.
And we would anticipate that starting fairly soon. I know they're already in discussions for utility installation within there. So that's gonna make it move fairly quick.
Do you think building prices are going to inhibit how quickly it fills up?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Do you think building prices, like the cost of like,
Very well.
okay.
It could slow things down.
Because I didn't know, like, are they anticipating
Not only
people,
prices, but just the availability because of
Right.
the shortages.
but like just to fill, is it going to be filled up in 2 years and then all of a sudden we've got hundreds of people at St. Acres when there's like, if it happens overnight and we can't even think that fast?
Yeah, I
If
don't,
there's any-
just with the size of the development, I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but
Okay.
it could happen, within a 3 to 5 year
3 to
period
5
where
years,
that fills
okay.
up. depending upon how those building prices and supplies,
Got it.
come along. Any thoughts on anything? Tracy, I know you're waiting.
Yes, I'm waiting. Thank you. Dean brought up the NRPA, or Mark, one of the NRPA standards, and if you look at our comprehensive park plan, Sand Acres Park is categorized as a neighborhood park. And a neighborhood park, traditionally, using the standards, serves a quarter mile to a half a mile radius. That's what they look at that size park serving. So if you start looking at that piece to the west, you're probably getting outside, when you're starting further west, of that service area for Sand Acres Park. So the village really needs, and I understand what Rex is saying, we don't know what the development's going to be, we're not sure how it's going to develop, but we really need to keep an eye on that, because we do not want to underserve this area by not being aware that we need to have another neighborhood park, or like Rex said, if there's a lot of wetlands there, maybe it's a great place for some walking trails, and you have more of a community-type park that's there that still fits the needs of the residents. So it seems like it's a ways off, but we really have to be aware and keep in mind the NRPA standards. And there's a really good map in your comprehensive plan that shows the service areas for each of the parks that we have in our community, and then areas that are currently not served. So it just gives us a good guide, and maybe if nothing else, we can update our comprehensive plan saying that we want to look for a park in this area, just to keep it in mind, and that we're aware, and we're going to, keep looking for that into the future.
Rex, when Sand Acres was developed, do you have an idea of how many homes went into that development?
When Sand Acres was developed, I would probably say maybe a quarter of the current homes were built at that time. I think there were maybe about 70 people at our initial Sand Acres Park planning meeting, which we thought was a fairly good representation of that area. So I'd probably say about a quarter of the homes were in at that time when we had that meeting to do the park. But there were already plans to have a lot of future development. Like, we knew there was going to be development coming up, so we knew what amenities were going to be needed for that facility.
And that being said, you're looking at 132 homes in this particular area, and then with that secondary subdivision, if that goes in, I think at the last board meeting, it was somewhere around 180 homes total projected.
In the one to the south?
Correct. There was also a secondary subdivision off of Grant Street called Three Putt Meadows. That was planned. That has been put on, I don't want to say the back burner right now, but that's kind of been put on hold, at least for the time being, by the developer, which is a different developer than the Highland Ridge Estates.
Yeah.
And another standard they look at for neighborhood parks is 1 to 2 acres per 1,000 people. So you're commenting about how many people. That's another standard we could keep in mind, that, how many people are in Sand Acres already, being served by that park, and where are we at on that standard as well. So it's another good way for us to look at it and see if we're lacking space. And Heidi, in your comment about, and Rex talking about park development fees, Sand Acres Park was, we took land for that park rather than taking park impact fees. So that land was donated to the village
Okay.
for that park.
From
So
the
just to give you an idea of,
From the developer?
right.
So what
yes.
happened, actually, a good amount of the parkland was donated.
Yeah.
All along Sand Acres Drive, none of that was donated. The entrance to the park was actually going to be to the south. And so out of park development fees, we wound up buying probably 6 or 7 lots that fronted Ridge Road.
Okay.
And to open up that park so people could actually see into the park and make it a more viable neighborhood park. Each of those lots probably cost, I'm trying to pull my memory back, probably around 45,000 maybe a lot, 50, somewhere around in there.
Sounds about right.
So a fair amount of park development money. Well, the whole park was basically built on park development money. Anything that wasn't donated to land the additional land was bought with park development funds, and then all the playground equipment and work and utilities were done with that as well.
Comparatively, if like the walking trails with the wetland versus like a pocket park or a neighborhood park, cost-wise, is it cheaper to build like a walking Park or like the paths on the wetland, something similar to Sherwood Forest is kind of what or Hidden Valley is kind of what I'm thinking versus putting in a playground is,
Well, there might be cost differences. There's certainly cost differences between the two, but I think you need to take a look at what do you need to do with the amount of people in that area.
well, what's going to
I mean,
serve the population.
if it's going to be if it's going to be a really dense housing development, it might be cheaper to go with walking trails, but in that case, you probably need a regular park to take some of the
And
pressure off.
you
the
figure if they're family homes, there's going to be kiddos who want to play at a park.
Right. New development, unless it's similar to like Woods Edge, where the homes are a little more compact and closer together, and you're looking more at childless families,
Okay.
maybe some older adults, something like that. And
Remind me,
like I
where's
said, we don't know what that's going to happen, but typically in a newer development, the rest of these, whether it be Spring Meadows or anything else like that, it was a lot of young families moving in.
Got it.
Rex,
And I should say, a lot of those additional families moved in because of the park.
At Sand Acres?
I guarantee that.
Wow.
That was a huge selling point for probably
I mean, it's
75%
gotta
of
be,
that
'cause
development.
it's not the
Because that
schools
park was
down
already being put in, because we've got pictures of the park being happening and a lot of the lots being vacant around it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge selling point for the realtors to have that park right there, because
Hmm.
the families knew they were within walking distance of it. And we, quite honestly, we spent a fair amount of money to make that a premier playground,
Hmm.
putting it in right out of the gate, and that was a big selling point for families.
where you show where Grant Street is, south of there, that's in town of Lawrence, right?
South of Grant is Lawrence,
So
correct?
those streets that we see there, are those residential, is that a residential area or is that commercial or is it something?
It is mostly residential. It's a combination of single-family residential, and then to the southwest a little bit, it's multifamily housing in there. And quite honestly, a lot of those folks also use Sand Acres Park. I believe they have Quarry Park a little further to the south, but
That's
Just-
just ball diamonds, I think, right? Quarry
yeah,
Park?
Yep. But just with the proximity, and depending upon what you're looking for,
Right.
you know, in a park facility, a lot of those folks also, especially with the trail coming right up Sand Acres Drive off of Grant, you know, it's an easy access to our park.
I'm not indicating that we should provide parks for Lawrence residents, but
I think we should
It-
charge
it
them
is-
an extra fee.
it does happen, I'm sure.
It's-
Rex, with regards to this subdivision development, I guess I'm under the impression that all the land that the developer has purchased has been divided into lots, and there really isn't any, is there any land left remaining for a park?
Not in the,
Joining
not
this
in,
particular
not in the
subdivision.
current development, no, not in the one that you see right there.
So it'd have to come from a secondary or additional?
It would have to come,
development.
yeah, future development.
Do we know how many acres this is? The font is super tiny, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Do we know how many acres, like the full, all three phases, and like how many acres that is?
Of the development, I do
Don't know?
not.
Okay,
I do not.
I'm just curious.
Sand Acres Park itself is about 7 acres,
7, okay.
you know, just over 7.
I'm a visual person, so having the size of the park compared makes sense, makes more sense to me.
Well, I mean, you can kind of see it on the colored map. I mean, you can see the size
Yeah.
of Sand Acres, and it probably looks like it is 7 or 8 times the size of Sand Acres Park. So maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe 50, 60 acres is my guess, give or take.
So Rex, as far as size-wise, is Gillis an example of like a pocket park?
No, Gillis is also, I would consider Gillis a neighborhood park. It serves a particular, there's a pocket park, you know, it could be the size of a postage stamp, you know. Canterbury may be the closest thing we've got to a pocket park, although we have a park named Pocket Park, which is right on the corner of Cormier and Packerland. Although really all that is a drinking fountain, you know, a couple of benches and a flower garden. It's the start of the Packerland Trailhead. But in terms of more of a pocket park, I would consider something like Canterbury.
That's the one with the gazebo, right?
But we just put a gazebo in Canterbury about 4 years ago.
Okay. I drove by a park with a gazebo, and I'm like,
Yeah,
what?
it has a gazebo in it, and 2 tennis courts
Okay, yep, that's
and a
the one.
playground.
And that would be a pocket, you said? Like the closest thing?
Yeah,
to
I mean, I think we've actually got it listed as a neighborhood park, but I mean, it kind of straddles it.
Got it.
Aubinger Park?
Same thing. Ashwaubenon has a lot of small parks that serve, very specific neighborhoods. And that's kind of been the philosophy of the village board, town board, back in the day, a lot of individual parks. Typically a trend, with newer communities is they have a little bit larger parks that are spread out a little farther apart. Ashwaubenon has a lot of smaller parks really close together. In addition to our big ones, of course.
Yeah.
But we have just over 300 acres of parkland, which is nice within the village.
It looks like in our comp plan, you guys, it has mini parks at a category, and that falls into a lot of the ones everyone just mentioned, like Canterbury, Gillis, Industrial Park, the Trailhead, Lois Aubinger falls in there, Mike Van, the Pocket Park on Packerland, Skyline, and Veterans all fall into that category of the village.
Veterans
come up
would
with
be a
mini
pocket
parks.
park, yep.
And then the neighborhood parks would be the next size ones that are there. So the ones we just mentioned are all categorized at least.
Thanks for the clarification, Trace. I forgot.
Pardon?
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah,
I forgot
can
about the
remember
mini
how
park.
this works out. Yeah, I knew there was some different
Yeah.
category, but yeah.
Rex, I guess that everything's said and done here. If we're looking at possibility of 132 homes in this subdivision, and we're looking at what Tracy was talking about, meeting some standards for developments and number of homes, then it probably behooves us as a board to really look carefully at the next subdivision that could possibly be added to this particular area, and being involved in the negotiations of looking at land being set aside for a possible park.
I do not disagree with the Dean. With that, if anyone wants to hear a recommendation from me, I guess I'll say it anyway. My recommendation would be to make some kind of motion that were additional residential development to occur in this particular area of the village. The park board might behoove the park board to make a recommendation to administrative staff and the village board to consider additional parkland in any developers' negotiations moving forward.
What he said, I motioned that.
Second.
Can I make an amendment or an attachment to that?
It was, Tracy, yeah, absolutely. It can't be my amendment. I'm only making a suggestion,
Yeah.
so.
I
yeah, go
don't
ahead.
think that was an official motion. but-
I would like to add not only that if it's residential development, any development out there, because whether it's commercial or whatever, and we have a lot of wetlands out there, so if nothing else, maybe we get the wetlands, we make a beautiful park like Hidden Valley or Sherwood Forest, that's more of a community park. So to just say, we're only going to get a park out there if it's residential, I think is really neglecting the potential development that we have
Sure,
for
and I guess
anybody else.
when I say park, I'm still thinking about like a Sand Acres-ish type of park. You're absolutely right. I mean, when you're talking with the wetlands and
Yep.
in areas that they can't build on anyway, having a trail system through there is going to benefit everybody. And actually add on to what we currently have in that area, easily be connected.
So any development then, like any future development, if we could be part of that discussion? Is
Yeah.
that kind of the motion?
Yeah, that we would recommend that we look for a park in this area and/or a trail system to meet the needs of this area, of this community
Growth
area,
needs, yes.
growth of this area. Something like that.
Is that a motion, Tracy?
Sure, that could be a motion.
I'll
So,
second that.
so Sue, I just want to make sure Sue has everything.
Verbiage.
It's recorded. It's recorded, I'll get it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So does everybody understand that, the motion? Okay. So do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Well, I
Okay.
think
Dean did already. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Dean, okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion approved. So this
Okay.
goes on, this goes on just to the village board for, is that what happens with this?
Yeah, I think it goes more at this stage to administrative staff. I mean, they'll all be notified that what the park board's wishes is, and I'll talk with President Kardasky and Joel just about how to notify the village board of those, of the recommendation by park board, whether it's a separate agenda item or whether it is just verbally that, you know, and I'm not sure what the right way to do it is, but we'll make sure the village board is aware of it.
Do you think, Rex, it could be handled by updating our comprehensive plan and adding that in there? And then maybe if that comes back to park committee for them to update the plan, include that, and then would that need to go on to village board for final approval? Would that take care of it, or do you think it needs to be more?
I don't know if we can certainly update it, the plan. I mean, we just updated the comprehensive plan a year ago, which was
Okay,
a long
sorry.
process. But that being said, you know, it's like, I wouldn't even be surprised if somewhere in there is some gray area of this already being in there. You know what I mean? Just because I know it makes note of the development in the southwest quadrant of the village. So it may somehow already be integrated into some of the verbiage in the comprehensive plan. Again, I don't think it needs to specifically be in there, but I mean, we can always make an amendment, but I don't know if I want to get into making a lot of amendments to the core plan. I mean, to me, I mean, because of the process that it took, I mean, it's a 5-year process. Although this would be a big amendment because you're talking another park, not just a single individual project. So let me talk to President Kardasky and Joel about it.
I mean, another good thing about putting it in there, and it's up, you know, the village can decide how they want to go, but it also will qualify as potentially for some grants if it is in there and it's more specified than if you're looking for grants.
Especially if it's trails.
Right.
on
So,
wetland, Yeah,
I mean, that's another advantage of having it listed in there, but.
yeah.
I think I tend to
think the
agree
trails
with
might be
Tracy
in there already.
on this. I think it gives it a little more teeth, I think, and a little more formality to it. I understand, Rex, what you're saying about opening that can of worms about amendments to the plan. I think this has quite a bit of importance to it.
I think trail additions in that part of the village is already in the plan, already, as a whole. But let me take another look, and if it's not clear, we'll make it clear as an amendment.
Okay.
We can do that.
If we separated a certain amount of acreage and to the board to do, we would give them the freedom to do what they want and just give us the acreage that we need.
Deborah, I'm sorry, could you put the mic down by your,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can't hear you too much. There you go.
If we had the board, if we designated a certain amount of acreage, and would we then give the board, the committee, the freedom to choose where they would want to put some park systems in the new development?
I think by designated a certain amount of, I mean, I know there's standards that are out
Yeah.
there, which we can follow. I don't know if we want to designate or request a certain amount of acreage. Is that your question at this time? Only
Yes,
because
it
we don't
was.
know what the development's going to be.
Okay.
You know, it could be very dense, it could be very open.
Okay.
You know, it could be commercial, in which case that would totally change what we would do out there. So I don't know if we can, you know, narrow it down quite yet of what size park we want or how much land or acreage or anything like that until we start to get more developers' requests that come in.
Okay.
I think we just want to make sure we have a seat at the table
Yes, yep.
when it comes to that time.
Yeah, Trustee Zerbal, I'll just add to some of the comments that were made just to provide some clarity to it. So one of the things, certainly let's check the core plan to make sure that there's some basic language that a park is recommended in that area of the village so that we have that recommendation and then the action tonight by the park board. Because there's kind of two events that'll happen if the developer or a developer comes forward with a proposal for an additional plat. The action tonight and the recommendation in the court will provide justification for our recommendation administratively. at the onset of planning for that plat, that parkland needs to be reserved in accordance to these recommendations. So that gives direction for Rex and Aaron Schutte, our Community Development Director, to know that this is a recommendation. Having it in the court plan then obviously aids, as been described, in securing grants for the future development of that site. So I think it's important to kind of do both, have the action tonight, make sure that it's identified in the court plan, although the specifics don't necessarily need to be concrete, but at least have some language there. And that'll give us as staff direction then that when a developer comes forward, we're prepared for that conversation with them.
Okay, thanks, Joel. Okay, anything else on this subject? We're good? Okay. Onward. Let's see, where are we? Capital project update and planning for the 2022 capital project budget submissions. We had, hopefully, everybody was able to look at this, a little bit of homework from last meeting. Rex?
Yeah, so I know at the last meeting, where we left off was, the thought was to go out and take a look at some of the projects that were both in the corp as well as the 5-year capital plan. And certainly that's not the only type of projects that are out there. There could be even more that aren't on here. There always are, it seems like. But looking at what we have in front of us, the thought was to try and pick about 5 projects to suggest for consideration in the 2022 budget. So I think what we should have now is just what hopefully everyone's had a chance, as you said, Chris, to take a look at the projects and both the 5-year and the corp, and maybe throw out some ideas on what we want to try and submit and see what we have available for funding.
Rex, just an initial clarification from the last meeting. If you look at the court plan and in the year 2020, you had mentioned that the bridge and the first 2 items on there are currently in some type of progress, correct?
Correct.
However, is the third one in the same position or not, the continuation of the trail around Ashwaubenon Park?
We look at that as a different phase. We want to get the bridge, if the village board approves the project, once it comes forward, in finality, with the bid, we want to get the bridge in first, and then the next phase of the project would be the road, the pathway around Ashwaubenon.
Okay. And then secondly, the fountain at the sports complex, we had some discussion about that earlier, that it might actually just be able to come out of the department budget because it was a smaller item. Is that done, or?
The drinking fountain you're talking
Drinking
about?
fountain, correct.
That probably, the way things are going this year, I don't know if that's going to be doable at this point. Is this a drinking fountain, a multi-level drinking fountain, is probably going to be about between $2,000 and $2,500 for what we're looking for, because we're looking for an adult one with a child wing that has probably like a accessibility, an ADA fountain. So, I believe I've got $40,000 in my budget, and that's already going fast with earmarked projects, whether it be for the concrete slab that we put in and some other things. We had to buy new backstop nets, and there's always a litany of things that come up that are anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000. I used already about $5,500 or $6,000 just on crack patching at Ashwaubenon and Ashwaubenon Sports Complex. So that $40,000 seems like a lot, but it goes fairly quickly. So if we can do it out of the year's budget, I certainly will, but I have to kind of wait towards the end of the year to see where we're at before I make any.
I just needed clarification so I knew where to put it in terms of my priorities.
Yep.
So,
I kind of did the same thing with unless it's been done already, the extended crusher dust in the same area, with it being a budget item at $4,000, I didn't put it as a need, I thought maybe. you
So
know.
the Crusher Dust walking path was actually, you're talking in the one in 2020 at the sports complex?
Yeah, was that,
That was done this past fall.
that was done,
That was,
okay.
that's completed.
Okay, all right.
And people are using that quite a bit. People are walking in that park. Because now it makes that full loop.
Oh, yep, that's right. Okay.
Rex, can you give us an idea of what is typically budgeted each year for capital park items? Like in years past, how much the Parks Department has gotten for capital items? Or does it vary so much that?
It
can't-
varies, Tracy, that
Okay.
I can't really give a good answer.
Okay.
You know, a lot of our park projects, quite honestly, were funded by the Oneida Service Agreement dollars, because, you know, with those dollars, you never know whether you're going to get them or not, basically. Usually we have, but with obviously COVID, those dollars probably will not be available to us again in 2022. So any funding that comes to us for any of these projects would need to probably come out of the general fund. If you're talking strictly general fund, it's been anywhere between $20,000 and maybe $50,000, and which isn't a lot. You know, when you're talking major park programs, the bigger park projects have all come out of either TIF or park development funds or Oneida Service Agreement dollars. Now, some of these may or may not be eligible for park development dollars. And I know we've got a few new members up here. Just to refresh your memory, park development dollars comes from park development fees. So any new housing starts, not remodels, not, you know, anything like that, but any brand new, like this whole development we just talked about a few minutes ago. Each one of those would pay into the park development fund, and then projects that would serve, they're supposed to serve that particular area. You can stretch that a little bit if it's a unique facility, but typically they're supposed to serve the general area that the park development dollars came from. And we've been able to do a few things with that in the past as well. And we've got a decent amount in our park development fund right now. I want to say we probably have a little over 300,000, maybe 350-ish. That doesn't include the money that you're seeing from the new starts. That's probably going to be another, you know, $125,000 from the new development. But we've got $100,000 earmarked for the Ashwaubenon River Trail Bridge, and we've also got $100,000 earmarked for the extension of the West Main Avenue Trail. So that's $200,000 right there, that out of our current pot of money that we've got in hand for park projects. Park projects, again, can't be maintenance items. They can't be replacement. They has to be new items that the need is there because of the additional growth. So for instance, if you wanted to replace a piece of playground equipment and use park development funds, you couldn't do that. But you could use general fund for the exact same size of playground equipment and use like another $25,000 out of park development to make a bigger playground, needing that bigger playground because of the additional housing that's come into the area. So there's ways that you can supplement projects with park development funds as well. It really depends on the project, you know, in the area that we're talking about.
Okay, Rex, to start out this process, the first thing I've got on mine is under the 2021 Corp plan, and that would be Smith Park, and that would be the replacement of the main playground equipment,
Yep.
circa 1991. I looked at that equipment today, and that is in need of being replaced. In addition to that, a little caveat, which would be maintenance. I looked at the swing set next to it, which has that little tire on it, and that's quite damaged from a safety standpoint. That probably should be replaced, but that would be a
Okay.
maintenance issue.
Well, we'll have our park crew team go out there and take a look. So the tire is probably cracked, is what you're saying, or missing plastic? Okay.
Before we go any further, is this, and we can certainly do it this way. Do we want to go, does everybody get a chance to kind of go 1 through 5 or 1 through whatever you wanted to go through?
Yeah.
Did everybody get a chance to look at this and do it? Do we want to go kind of person by person, like Dean is doing right now, and just kind of give him his 1 through, give Rex his 1 through 5, and
Yep, typically
you
that's how
you can
we've done
kind of tally it up however you want to?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Dean.
Okay, so Smith Park, main playground equipment, that would be my number 1. Number 2, actually, I looked at it and from a disability standpoint, and that would be Aubinger, and that's, I think, in the 2022, 23 area. That would be an accessible path from Barberry Street to the shelter and the playground.
Okay.
Okay. Number 3. You already took that off my list with continue the trail around Ashwaubenon. I did have that fountain on there over at the sports complex. If you want to put that down as a number 3. And we had Waterford, I was going to put that on there, but I looked at the equipment and I think that can be held off until 2022 or 23.
Yeah, typically, we only want to do one particular playground a year, unless
Right.
something catastrophic happens where we'd want to do two.
And then another one was number 2 of 3 of the sun shelters for the Ashwaubenon Lake. That seems to be a hot ticket item.
So you're going to say that's number 4?
Yeah, number 4, correct. Number 5. Question on number 5. We were looking at Clipstein, I know, we were looking at the band shell. You wanted $10,000 was estimated to do a study with regards to the band shell.
That would be for an actual design of what would fit in there. Because what we'd want to do is we would need to have blueprints on a design to actually bid something out.
This would be like for concerts in the park? Is that what you're looking at?
Correct.
Is that going to be then the main park hosting then the concerts in the park? Because we also had them at Pioneer.
We hosted at Pioneer specifically because Clipstein was being, in the community center, were being remodeled. That's why we were at Pioneer for 2 summers. We have not had a concert at Pioneer since the community center opened back up.
And this is just basically so that the musicians can be sheltered from the weather? Is that?
Correct. We'd also probably want to have it elevated a few feet in the air just for easier viewing. And since it would be elevated in the air, you would need a handicap ramp that goes up to it.
I guess I know we put this on the court plan, but now that I've had more time to think about it, I guess I'm just kind of wondering about the justification for having a band shell now, especially considering the cost.
Is it possible that it be used for other events also or not? Because it's a lot of money for 7 or 8, events per year.
Sure. I mean, it can be used for any ideas that people have. For instance, that site, well, this Wednesday and Thursday, the Historical Society will be keeping our tent up, and we'll be having their History in the Park presentation where past President Ted Pamprin will be here in Ashwaubenon and telling about, a little bit of the history of Ashwaubenon, some former public safety officers, and then, so any kind of show or program, it doesn't have to be for concerts, is available. Could be used on that particular site. I think when we put this on there, please also keep in mind that the cost of the band shell would probably be somewhere around 200, maybe a little bit more once it's all said and done. But it's been a couple of years, but there was a community donor that was willing to pick up a fair amount of those dollars as well. I mean, I'm not going to name that particular business, but I have a feeling if we went back to that business and said, we've got plans, we've got the okay from, the park board, the village board has given their initial approval, should we be able to raise a certain amount of funds to help go towards the band shell? I think there's a good chance that they would bring their donation to the forefront again.
Can you say what percentage of the cost that that would cover, or less than half, or?
I don't know the amount, I would probably say half of it anyway, based on the cost of between 2 and 2.5.
Well, thank you, Rex. I just needed a little more clarification about my input in terms of the band shell idea.
Yeah, and everyone's got different priorities, so I don't, whether it be a band shell or whether it be trails or a playground or another baseball field, you know what I mean? I will say, I've had discussions with Jay Krieger, who's one of the village board, one of our village board members, and he's also the baseball coach, and he's looking at improvements that aren't even on here out at Ashwaubenon Park, where they want new fencing, and he even brought up the fact of a permanent building for indoor practicing during the winter time, and which is a fairly large expense.
Dream big, because you do one at baseball, you're doing one at softball too.
Well,
And soccer needs one too.
we all need one, right?
Yeah.
So
We got a hockey team
part
yet?
of part of those initial discussions that I had, I know the school district recently had a referendum that passed that had a number of projects that were approved. And one of the projects that they didn't bring forward to the voters was an indoor multi-purpose facility, also on the high school property. And quite honestly, would that make better sense? Because then it wouldn't be only used by baseball. You could get more than just pitchers, catchers in there. You could get a full team in there practicing. You could get soccer in there. You could get softball in there. You'd rotate times, that would supplement then the field house. So I'm not stumping for anything. I just only suggested that might be another option that would probably make better use out of any tax dollars, that more groups could use it year round versus, The other thing too is who's using it most. Is it Ashwaubenon Youth Baseball, which is what we're concerned about, or is it the high school program? Yes, it's for the youth, but then the school district, if that's who's using it, then they need to get involved with some financial incentives as well. And I don't know, I don't think they're ready to do that. Again, I think the best use for something like that is, again, a multi-purpose facility, and whether if there's a committee that wants to take that up in the community in the future, that might not be that will be a good discussion topic. Let's put it that way.
Hey, Rex.
Another thing too is there was talk of, there's always been talk of bringing lights back to Clipstein Park, ball field lights. Those lights were taken down because the poles were showing, they had, there's actually a company that tests the strength of poles, the wood poles, and ours were not in good condition. It's the same reason why the high school took down many of the wood poles, or all the wood poles out on the football field. This company tested them, and they're like, yeah, they're a couple good storms, and you could potentially have some issues. But in lieu of all of the contamination that was found in some different areas that's since been remediated, the option of putting lights on Clipstein is pretty much sailed, long time ago. Unfortunate, but so again, we had some different discussions on baseball projects. There's certainly things that could happen out at Ashwaubenon in terms of enlarging the dugout areas or things like that, which is what we just recently talked about in the last couple months. But I want to bring that forward as well. When I talk about there's a lot of different projects out there that aren't even on here, a lot of different segments of our community are looking to try and advance their particular sport and use, use of facilities for the kids. So anyway, sorry, getting way off topic here.
Okay, Rex, my fifth recommendation is the restrooms at Fort Howard Park. And I will then pass it on to the next board member.
Okay.
Anybody want to volunteer or?
Well, you're all gonna be giving me a 1 through 5, so.
Do we
whether
keep it to that
do
side
now
over there?
or do it in a few minutes.
Deb, you want
Oh, sure, I can go. My choice number one will be the kayak launch, just because there's such an interest and increase the public interest in kayaks and usage of kayaks. That would be my number one choice.
All right,
My number two choice would be the restrooms at Fort Howard Park, because we have lots and lots of kids that go there, and we have a future use of a splash pad there, and that, I think that would be a good thing to do. And number three, I would say replace the structures at Smith Park. And number four, I would increase the additional sunscreens at Ashwaubenon Lake.
four would be the
4.
sunscreens, okay,
4 for them.
and then 5,
Eh? I'm stuck. We could do anything. Yeah, just the 4 of them, okay?
and we can pass on number 5 for now, Deb, and come
Okay.
back to you in a little bit. Would someone else like to, while Deb is contemplating, would someone else like to give their top 5?
I'll go, I'll stay down here.
Trace, yeah?
I would, the Smith Park Playground, Fort Howard restroom with splash pad, kayak launch. I would like to see the trail put in at Ashwaubenon. If we put the bridge in, I would like the trail to be the next year so that you have access to that bridge if we put it in. So I think that's important to get in there. And those are the 4, I guess I have. Because I was thinking of the drinking fountain too at ASC was one, but that's not a very big expense. The other comment I have on this is, are there any of these items, Rex, that you think would be good grant projects? Because if you say, general fund budget, we're budgeting 20 to 50,000 for park projects. And I know we have park impact fees. I know we have Oneida Nation, and we have, what was the third one you said? But if any of these would be,
Well, a lot of them could be grant eligible.
so I think that's something, and I know the village has been really good, and you've gotten some really good grants out at Ashwaubenon for some of the wildlife things you've done out there. So to really be able to supplement it and maybe do more by applying for some grants, maybe picking some that are more grant eligible than others, kind of thing like the kayak launch, I would think that would be a really,
Yeah, the kayak launch
grant launch.
and the trail around Ashwaubenon are kind of combined into our next phase for that whole project. If we do the trail around Ashwaubenon, we'd include to me, the kayak launch would be included in that, because it would loop around that park. And there's grants for the trail as well as grants because it's along the Fox River, which is nice.
Yeah.
We lose some points because we would have just gotten a bridge grant. But there are specific projects just for the kayak launch as well, from different funding sources. Not to mention coastal management grants, stewardship grants. I mean, there's a lot of them out there.
Mark?
I think the first 4 of mine have been covered, but one I would like to add would be,
So I'm sorry, which ones?
You want to put them in order? No?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think Rex might be
I
kind of,
lost track.
okay.
No, what I would like to add is do an evaluation of, for ice rink facilities, whether it would have to include some type of shelter or not, and what type of area it would be put on. I know that the ice rink we had, Eclipse Line Park, was bad because it was in a parking lot and it covered a sewer, which melted the ice under in that area. And I know that sometimes if you put it on grass, it kind of kills the grass for but are there other areas, maybe on a baseball field or something that could be, anyway, that would be one of my suggestions, would do an evaluation on, because we've had lots of inquiries about ice rinks.
We get a few inquiries, or I do anyway, each year on ice rinks. Ice rinks are not, I'll be honest, they're not cheap to maintain at all. And they're totally weather dependent.
Yeah.
We used to have, I grew up in Ashwaubenon. I used to skate in an ice rink in my backyard. My backyard was literally Gillis Park at the time. It was 50 yards away. And there used to be an ice rink on the Gillis Park softball diamond back when I was a kid. And then we used to go over, I used to skate on a hockey team for a year or two over at the community center when the tennis courts and the parking lot were literally an ice rink as well. So a lot of good memories of those ice rinks. Talking to a lot of other agencies around, a lot of them put them in and they don't see a lot of usage. They do it for a little while. I don't want to surmise why they went away back in the day, but I'm going to guess it was, with the addition of the Cornerstone Ice Center being put in, there's a lot of skating opportunities there, more organized versus.
Titletown too, with their
And
ice.
now with Titletown, a lot of people go over to Titletown. Not that the local skating rinks still couldn't make a go of it or be worthwhile. There were a number of parks in Ashwaubenon that had them, but also when you're talking about maintaining those ice rinks, they are staff intensive, extremely staff intensive, and quite honestly, I don't know with the amount of crew that we have if we would do a very good job at being able to maintain them. And I'm just being honest. I will do whatever the village board, or attempt to do whatever the village board eventually tells me to do. But it would not be easy to do. Typically, when you're flooding ice rinks, you need to flood at night because of the colder weather. So now you're having a guy work well into the evening versus during the day when the sun's not shining. When it's cold weather, they're working with water in freezing weather because that's the weather you need when you're laying ice. Right now we have 3 full-time guys, and one of them is half assigned to the community center, and the other 2 are going to be assigned to snow plowing operations on top of it. So there's not a lot of maintenance that we're going to be able to do if we wind up. And I'm not, I hate sounding negative, but it will be a challenge with our staff to do it. Not that we couldn't, but it would be a challenge.
On my list, I did put it down as an evaluation to review the pros and the cons. And
Yep. Well, I named a lot of cons. and there's a lot of pros. Like I said, how fun is it just to be able to walk over to your local park with a pair of ice skates and just jump on and, not pay anything, you know what I mean? That's what we all did. But is that what today's youth would do? I don't know. I don't know. There's a couple of parks, obviously, that are set up for it. Smith Park still has the ring. Smith Park back in the day used to have the ice rink on the basketball court. And then it was put on the northern part of the park, and it still has the ring, the little mound that would hold the water onto the grass, if we were to put a liner down, basically. Pioneer Park had an ice rink between the tennis courts in diamond number 3 and 4. That's what that fire hydrant is right out there. And then they had the warming shelter. There's actually an old an old wood burning stove in there. That was the warming shelter for the ice rink. That's why that's still in there. So, there's still pieces of old rinks that could be tried again were we to go that direction. But I think we'd really have to have a lot of people in the community saying we want an ice rink, at least for me to say, let's give it a try at this point. So that's my own opinion.
number 5 then, Mark? Okay,
Hold on, so Mark, I need to try and somehow, I mean, you don't even have to give them to me in order, but what were your, other than the ice rinks, what were your projects that you were thinking of?
I listed the additional shelters, sun shelters at the lake.
Okay,
Looking at the band shell design, at least. One of them was the pathway at Ashwaubenon Park from the street, which would probably be Barberry,
yep,
into the playground and the water fountain. I know there's an elevation question there.
there is,
The EMA
we'd
thing.
probably have to start the path close to where
Down the street or something.
to Marvell, like right off the corner of Marvell and Barberry, and kind of loop it up.
Yeah. So there again, it's the evaluation of the pros and cons of
Yeah.
of it. And what else did I say? The drinking fountain at the Ashwaubenon Sports Center, I don't know if that's being done or in the plans or whatever it is, but I had that on my list also. We talked about that and having access to the drinking fountain for younger kids too, or some kind of
Yep.
step or something.
Okay. I have a feeling I'll be looking at my budget real closely at the end of the summer, see if we can get that one chalked off quick. Hopefully we can.
That could be a big project or a small one, depending what you do with it.
Heidi?
all right. I'm a huge fan of splash pads, but also know that they are quite the expense. So I'm going to hold off on that and put that as my number 6. We'll put that as number 6. But first I'll start with Smith Park. I like that one.
Park is going to be number 1 for you?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Ashwaubenon Lake structures, the sun structures, I think that's a good one. I would love to see the Packerland Trail extended down to Grant, especially if we are going, I believe that's in the next, like, future years. I would be at, like, 2024. But I think that could be also, if that development is butting up to Grant, like, that's also, like, something we can do quick and easy, or like, maybe not specific to that development, but at least a selling feature to say, hey, we've got this until we get that. And then number 4, I put the Fort Howard restrooms, and then I'll move the splash pad to number 5. Yeah. And then I think a splash pad at Fort Howard would probably be where my vote would go.
Splash pad at Fort Howard is number 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, for me, I had, number 1, I had to replace main playground structure at Smith Park. Number 2, the Fort Howard build a restroom facility with the options for the splash pad. Number 3 was to continue the trail around the park at Ashwaubenon. Number 4 was the kayak launch. Number 5 was the installation of the additional sun shelter at Ashwaubenon Lake. And I actually had a number 6, but actually I'll put this number 6 and I'll put a real big star on it. The more we talked about it today, the band shell. I added it as number 6, just an extra, because it just intrigued me. But the more we talk about it today, I can just envision it just being used almost every night, between having, whether it's music or plays or historical speeches or something. I think it's one of those things that, rare things that it'll be, if you build it, they will come, or they will use it. The more I think about it, it'd be really unique. I think it'll be heavily used.
Very good.
About the band shell, that's proximity to the community center, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted, like, for example, if they were renting the community center and wanted to do a band out there for their wedding, is that something that would be feasible, or is that?
I don't know if in that particular setting, we'd want to like rent it out for people to do their own personal bands, or
Okay.
I think we want to have some kind of control over that particular site, in my opinion. Only because outside volume levels and people in crowds, you know, oh, we're only going to have 200 people, and all of a sudden there's like 2,000 people.
And there's open
You
intox
know, because
everywhere.
there's a
and-
particular band there, it could, you know, and then there's no staffing, there's no, you know, because we don't know
Security, yep.
what someone privately is doing behind the scenes.
Okay.
You know, so you just need to be careful on stuff like that.
Somebody knew Aerosmith or somebody like that,
Yeah,
you know,
who
had a
knows?
personal connection, cheap trick, and
There's a real good cover, hair metal cover
glam band.
The glam band.
Oh,
We've looked at them potentially for the blast. So maybe in 2023, because we've got or maybe we could do them next year too, because I don't know if I put it in the upcoming things, but it is Ashwaubenon's sesquicentennial next year, 150th anniversary of the village/town of Ashwaubenon. I don't know if anyone was around in 1972 here in the village already and remembers the centennial. I was about 9 or 10 years old. I remember riding my bike over. I can remember there was carnival rides and elephants, and Apollo astronaut was leading the parade that went right down Oneida Street. There was a lot of fun stuff going on for the centennial. So we're gonna see what we can come up with. What's that?
I think I've got my pin yet from,
Were you a participant or an organizer?
No, participant.
You're a participant? Remember the retired firefighters, right?
Yeah.
Well, at the time, they were the firefighters, but right behind like Burger King, and two big giant telephone poles, and they had strung a metal cable between the two of them. So think of a tug of war type of thing, and they had a pulley up on a pulley wheel up on the metal wire, and hanging from it was a half barrel. And then they had two teams on each side with their fire hoses, and basically whoever could push the barrel up on the wire.
very popular
Pass.
down in like the Hortonville, Dale,
Yeah,
Greenville area.
it was fun, and I remember that, you know, even as.
This was before I was, you're speaking before I was born,
This was
but I do remember
1972.
what water
This
fights.
was 1972, yeah. But I remember that. It was a big deal back
My
then.
parents were maybe 7 when that happens.
So what are you saying?
Movie.
I need to get one more item from Deb. Deb, have you come up with the number 5 yet?
Sure I did. Accessible pathway at Albinger Park.
I'm sorry,
Accessible pathway at Albinger Park,
at Aubinger Park.
from Barbary
Gotcha. Okay, yep.
to the playground.
So just at first blush, I'm going to say the number one item is going to be the Smith Park Playground out of everyone's vote. So I need to tell you a little bit about that, and then we can move on. Smith Park, so I need to back up. American with Disabilities Act requires the village, and it's a good requirement, it requires everybody to have certain standards to make different facilities accessible to people that have mobility challenges or any kind of physical and cognitive challenges. Let's just talk playgrounds. So what they want is every particular area of a community should have accessible facilities for people that are living in that area. Based on our size, we have divided the village into quadrants. And we have an ADA facility accessibility plan. And Smith Park is considered one of the chosen parks in the quadrant to be accessible, which is why part of the toddler piece of equipment has the rubberized surfacing, why we have sidewalks going through, why we put the sidewalk in to the shelter, to the drinking fountain, where other parks don't have that as much. So by with the new piece of playground equipment that's going in, whatever we choose, we're probably going to need to, and this is something that I'll talk with Mary about, the equipment is probably going to be 60, but if we do the rubberized surfacing, it's going to increase that cost because we're going to have to, as one of the, as the accessible park in that quadrant, it's going to need to be accessible, that piece of equipment. So that means, you know, rubberized surfacing, at least to the equipment and to the transfer station, and probably a slide and some ground-mounted things, or more, you know what I mean? Just an FYI, so that old piece of equipment will go out. You know, the ADA Act wasn't even, well, it was probably in its infancy back in 1991. When did it start, Trace? 89, I think it was, when that was actually, I want to say it was made up in the late, or created in the late 80s.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But again, that's one of the parks in our plan that is targeted as an ADA accessible park. So whatever we put in is going to need to be accessible, you know, to the general public, which will be fine because we've got that sidewalk that we put in 2 years ago that goes right down the middle of the park, and so the accessibility point will be off of that sidewalk. Just FYI. So that would be part of any bid package that we put together, be playground equipment and the accessibility. As an FYI, the other parks are Sand Acres Park, Fort Howard Park, and I believe Ashwaubenon. And the sports complex is there, anything that we can put in to make accessible, we make it accessible. Any unique facility has to be accessible, no matter where it is or what it is. If it's the only one in the village, it has to be accessible. Now for playgrounds, not every playground needs to be accessible, at least one in each quadrant, and again, that's what I wanted to get my point across here, is Smith Park is one of the targeted parks in the quadrant that it serves. So, okay, sorry. Chris, back to you.
Okay, so you're gonna tally these up and we'll use this for future,
Yeah, what I can do is Sue and I can put together just a list, or almost like a ranking type of a thing, and we can send it to you. I don't know if it needs to be another agenda item. If you'd like it to be, I can make it one, or I can just send it to you. But then these rankings will be what I focus my attention on when I'm putting together the 2022 budget submissions for discussion with administration.
okay. Anything else? Does anybody want to hear back from Rex on what comes in? Should we?
I mean, I'll make something up, so
Yeah.
you'll all get it. And it can be
Okay.
just an attachment or whatever for a future meeting.
Okay. Yep. Good. Anything else on this matter? Everybody's good? Okay. We'll move on to June Parks Rec and Forestry Department reports.
Well, I'm going to switch this up a little bit, and I would like Deborah. I would like Deborah to take the stage and talk a little bit about the Moby Mat ribbon cutting ceremony. She was there, and I think, because I think that's a big deal. It was a nice crowd that was there. We got some great, we had the whole Lions Club came out, who donated money for the Moby Mat, and TV stations, media were there. I thought it was wonderful. The amount of people that were there and the press that we got from it afterwards. So Debbie, want to talk a little bit about that?
I was really very pleased to be asked to be part of the dedication and to dip my feet in the water. I'm looking forward to, in the future, probably getting into the lake and putting my wheelchair right in there and getting out. Although that might have been in my younger years. But I'd be game to try that. And hopefully that gave an idea to other people with mobility issues. So, well, I can do that. And that'll probably bring more people to come out to our lake and try that.
I talked with our lake staff on Monday, several of whom were working this weekend. And from the publicity, they said there were several people that that had mobility challenges, that were in wheelchairs, that were there the opening weekend, which is wonderful, because we got some really nice press on it. The people picked up on some of our Facebook posts and the news stories, and then they put it on their Facebook pages. If you go to the CP Center, they had a really nice Facebook post. The UWGB Disability Advocates, or a number of groups around the greater Green Bay, Brown County area picked up on that story and sent it out to all of their membership. It worked out really well. It's interesting, you don't realize the challenges someone who has, who's in a wheelchair has. Our mat is great, but there were some other challenges that you had even getting to the mat, Deb. The threshold going into the chalet,
We had to go backwards.
we had to go backwards because it was, the bump was so high that you would have tipped over going forward. That little concrete lip going into the chalet, with the concrete pads going in, we had to go backwards over that because pushing you down, it stopped your wheelchair. So we have to do a better job, and we will probably, it might even be a budget item, putting in to have some concrete taken out in front of the chalet and making things a little bit more level, because that's vintage 1974 concrete that's in there. And it's shifted a little bit, but, we've got this wonderful mobility mat now, and there's other challenges, that we have to meet, to make it fully accessible for everyone. So I thank you for being there.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
I find the mat just so refreshing because in the past, I really wanted to go out to the beach with my children, and sure, I always got stuck in the sand, and I got stuck. And I'm a little heavy to be pulling all over the place, but, this was just perfect. You could just go right down there, and
It really worked in well, and
it was wonderful.
yeah, and they've got spikes anchoring in the sand about 2 or 3 feet, excuse me, 2 or 3 feet long, and it extends into the water probably about 10 or 15 feet, I'm guessing. So you can get in the water on this mat, and I thought the ride was certainly much smoother than what we've had in the past.
Yeah.
And it's much wider, so you're not like trying to balance per se of keeping a straight line. I'm hoping that it continues to grow and so people know about it and be used. I think it's a really nice addition to the beach.
I like the fact that it was all recycled plastic.
So again, that was a ribbon cutting that we had, and thank you to the Ashwaubenon Lions for doing that. That was awesome, a great donation. Let's see, pre-construction meeting, we had that last week for the Ashwaubenon Marina to do the piers on the end of the marina, redo that. That actually is going to be moving along very quickly. We're looking at starting that project the week of June 21st. Martell's moving that up on their list only because with the office building that's being built right now, that area can be used as an easy cut through for a lot of their equipment and materials that need to be brought out to the end of the pier. They're looking at pouring that parking lot and doing landscaping immediately after the 4th of July. So Martell thought it would be good to move that up, and they could, apparently they've talked already with the people there, and they can use that as a cut through for some of their own work. So that's going to be starting real shortly.
Can I just add one thing, Ashwaubenon, about the lake? Howard, the Howard Quarry
Yep.
is now for residents only, Howard residents only. There's a lot on social media right now about how Ashwaubenon is open to non-residents. So Ashwaubenon and Ashwaubenon are getting some publicity in that regard because Howard is doing residents only at the quarry.
We actually get quite a few phone calls asking, is it for residents or non-residents, and No, it's open to anybody. It's,
Right.
here's the admission price. You get a discount if you're an Ashwaubenon resident, but it is open to everyone.
Yeah, it's going around on social media right now, so.
Good. History in the Park taking place tomorrow night and Thursday, 6 o'clock. You can buy your tickets at the Park and Rec office. We've got some good characters that will be there being presented and presenting just about history of Ashwaubenon. It should be a unique program. Tomorrow, 11:30 until 2, we have our first summer concert of the season. Third Degree, which is actually an Ashwaubenon-based band of former Ashwaubenon students. It is a cover band. It's being sponsored by Fortify Bank, who is a huge sponsor of our programs, not only the concert series, but the food truck rallies as well. So we thank them. But that'll be tomorrow, starting at 11:30. Supposed to be sunny and mid to high 70s, so wonderful weather. We're not going to have that humidity yet, so come on out to Cliffstein Park. Ashwaubenon Swim Club will be the concession group that is serving concessions.
Is that a fundraiser?
What's that?
Is that a fundraiser for them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Curious.
Yep.
So I don't buy any flowers from the swim club member who's gonna hit me up. You got concession money.
Busy week this week, program-wise, and at the end of last week. So we had our park program start this past Thursday, right after school got out. So this is the first full week of that. Day camps started yesterday. We're averaging over 50 kids registered per week in our day camp program. Summer concerts, as I said, starts. We have the parks that the programs are at are Sand Acres, Argonne, Canterbury, Waterford, Pioneer, and Fort Howard. Smith Park has been added this year for the free summer lunch program, so the district will be bringing their school van and dropping off lunches at both Fort Howard and at Smith. And
Any updates on how the Argonne Park program is doing since it moved from Valley View?
I have not heard
No? Okay.
anything about the Argonne Park.
Just
program.
curious.
Top dance began today. Sports 101 started today. Those all had some good numbers on it. Youth tennis started yesterday, but it got rained out after the first session, so it pushed some of that back. Chickadee pickleball tournament is full with 40 participants. That's coming up this weekend. Also this weekend, if you want to get down and dirty, we have the Great Ashwaubenon Cleanup. This will be the 10th or 11th year of the cleanup. Typically, we have a lot of the youth Cub Scout, Boy Scout organizations, Girl Scouts. I know we've had one organization just call us this week that will be bringing in 15 volunteers on Saturday morning that we haven't had before. So that's usually a pretty fun time. And what we do there, it's basically not so much trash pickup anymore because we've got a lot of great trash pickers. People love Ashwaubenon Park, so we've got a lot of people volunteering, but it's a lot of invasive species removal. Our goal right now along Broadway is to try and open up the park frontage, so as people are driving by Broadway, they can see into the park. And we've been working on that for a number of years now, so we'll have some groups working in that area on both sides of the river. And we'll probably also have a group go back down to the Fox north of the lake and kind of take care of any buckthorn or honeysuckle that may have sprouted there in the last year or two, kind of knock that back down again. They basically cut it down, they trim branches, they actually cut some trees down because buckthorn can get to be pretty good sized if it's left alone for a long time. And as you all know, and as I say every year, the reason why you can see the river is because of all the volunteers that started to do that work 10 years ago. So that was really nice. They've really been wonderful to work with. And what we do afterwards, they work for 2.5 hours. We give them a free hot dog lunch afterwards, lemonade, some soda, and we also give them a free swim pass that they can either use that day or at some point this season for their volunteer time. And it's worked out real well. Forestry, Tim's been busy. We've taken down a number of ash trees. A lot of stump grinding. This is the time of year that all the flower beds are being planted by our volunteer groups, or volunteer people that have signed up for the Adopt a Garden program. They've been doing a lot of pruning throughout the village, so it's just a busy time of the year right now, and it's just aquatics. The Ashwaubenon Lake opened last Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those 3 days, we had over 2,100 people in the first 3 days. It's been hot. Well, I wish we could have opened about a week earlier. That would have done well. So good group of staff. Mel is fully staffed. That's a big kudo and feather in her cap for doing a great job of recruiting. She's a lifeguard training instructor, so she teaches her own classes. She recruits them, she trains them, and she keeps them. And it works out great. Especially compared to some other communities that are quite honestly struggling to find staff to open their aquatic facilities. Swim lesson registration is coming in. With COVID being less prevalent in the community and the numbers looking as good as they are, the school district has dropped some of their concerns, as well as some of the state mandates. So our instructors now are able to get back into the water with the kids, instead of having to have the parents be in the water with the kids, even at some of the older age groups. With the instructors being able to go back in the water with the kids, numbers have shot back up where we want it to be. And so hopefully we'll be able to catch up, because a lot of kids never got swim lessons last year. We kind of lost a full year of water safety. And so I'm hoping that those numbers stay strong throughout the summer, where families or parents want to make sure their kids are water safe. Food truck rally last month was phenomenal. We had a great turnout. Probably a couple thousand people showed up. People are ready to get out of the house. They're ready to go out and do things. It was extremely busy beyond and we expected a busy crowd, but it was way beyond our expectations. So we've got our next one coming up next Thursday night, June 24th. Music Jar Band is going to be the band. We have a special event going on at the lake. The lake will have extended hours that night until 8 o'clock to coincide with the food truck rally. So people can go back and forth, or the kids can be at the lake and the parents can be listening to the band, however they want to work it out. But our numbers should be pretty good. Please come and check it out. If you haven't been there, it's a good time. It could get busy again. We don't know.
Are there different trucks coming this time, or are they the same ones? I need to strategically plan.
Some will be the same, some will be different.
Okay, there will be different ones.
We try and mix it up. Some of the trucks are there every time, but typically there are 2 or 3 different trucks at least.
Got it.
At every rally.
Got it. Those fresh cheese curds cannot be beat from the doghouse.
He will be there again.
Yeah, get those cheese curds, guys.
No.
Instant heart attack. It was so good.
The doghouse will be there again,
So good.
serving those cheese curds up. They are good.
They're just so fresh. They're
Yep.
right there.
Yep, squeaky.
And it's local cheese, too. He gets it from Scray.
Yep. Does anybody have any questions on programs we got going on or anything we've talked about? Dean?
Rex, I've got a question with regards to the planting of trees and terraces. You all know that there's a lot of infestation of the emerald ash borer.
You can see it all over,
Yes. and
including in the village.
It's devastating, because one of the problems that I think we had originally is there's a big difference between monoculture planting and polyculture planting. And I believe that we have on our recommended list of trees, I think there's like 5 different ones for planting in terraces. Is that correct?
I would have to take a look at our tree planting plan. However, I do know that Tim, our forester, and our forestry plan does specifically talk about trying to diversify the types of plantings that are done, so we don't have that same issue. Actually, a bigger potential issue, and I don't want to jinx anybody on it, but it's maples. We've got probably 48% of our street trees right now are maples, especially with the elms coming down, or the ash coming down, excuse me.
Right.
So hopefully the maples stay strong, but the ones that are being replaced are a big variety. We have different hybrid elms, we've got ginkgos. There's a lot of different trees out there, but a lot of different trees create different types of messes that might not be best planted in a terrace area. So it's trying to find a gray area where it's appropriate for a terrace planting, but won't necessarily make a mess or tear up a sidewalk or a road as the root system grows.
A case in point on Carroll, up in our neighborhood, okay? They're the trees with the white-green flowers on them currently. I don't know what the name of that
I
particular.
believe those are calorie pears.
Okay. I have noticed that in the village, there's quite amount of them that are planted in a row in various areas. And again, the concern that I have with that is, you can call it climate change, you can call it whatever you want, but if you get an infestation in, there are some insects that'll eat 200 different species, and you really can't, you can have all the polyculture that you want, and it may not work against that type of insect. But then again, you have like the emerald ash borer, which is more specific to the ash.
Yeah.
And again, my concern for planting those trees is we could get an infestation particular to that tree, and you wipe them out. And
Could happen with any species. I will say there's a reason why we plant calorie pears. If you're going to notice, I'll probably put money on this. They're planted under electrical lines, and it's a preferred tree to go under electrical lines because there's not a lot of tree. It reaches the height of just below the line, and so it's either planting a tree that fits that height requirement or plant no tree at all. And so that's why you're probably seeing a lot of those calorie pears, those white flowering ones. My guess is the majority you're seeing are under electrical lines on the sides of the streets, at least, that have them, because that's almost the preferred tree for that, not only in Ashwaubenon, but other communities as well.
so I guess basically that's a sacrifice we're willing to make down the road if we get an infestation for those.
At this point, yes.
Okay.
We're not planting them in places that they don't need to be planted. If there's not an electrical line, there's other good options out there, whether it be a ginkgo, whether it be hybrid elms. There's different types of maples. I mean, we try not to plant maples just because of the number that we already have, but everyone wants a maple. Everyone wants a maple because they're pretty trees.
Right. Well, there's infestations that are going through various species of maples now, too.
Yep. We're also losing a number of oaks in Klipstein Park. There's a yellow oak borer that's going through right now. A lot of those trees in there are well over 100 years old. They're stressed because it's a wet park. And we've lost a number of them to that bug already. We've tried to quickly take down the ones that are dead and replant, grind the stumps out and replant. But you'll see a little bit of a difference when you go in there for the summer concerts if anyone makes it there this week.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? Anything for the agenda for next meeting from anybody? Anything that we discussed today that should be on there?
I just have a question. We, at our finance committee, right before this one, we looked at the rates for our ambulance, and they haven't been adjusted for a really long time, so they were adjusted up. My question to Rex is, have we looked at park impact fees in the recent future? Is that something that we should look at and see where we're at if we're out of line with those? And I know Joel had mentioned part of the budget process where the village is going to be looking at all different fees.
I would probably say we haven't done an official survey. We've done just a lot of polls between park and rec directors. Ashwaubenon is still probably the highest.
Okay.
And compared to other agencies in terms of what they're collecting, and we are still the only municipality in the state that collects it from new businesses being built as well on commercial property based on the number of employees. We're the only one that has that on an ordinance form.
Impact fees are a little bit different too than normal fees and charges. They do require a needs assessment to be completed. So if we're going to change the impact fee structure, then we would need to amend our needs analysis.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure how long we had done, how old the fees were. I wasn't sure how, but it sounds like we're up to date and
We've kept an eye on it,
good.
but there's still a lot of communities that haven't even gotten that off the ground on that yet, but we are probably, take 90% of the state, we're probably like leading the way in the collection of them and the use of them. So,
Great, thank you.
well, thanks to you.
All right. Take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
This conference